Coronation Island?
Coronation.
This interview you're hearing
And that's where the ship was wrecked?
is with a man named James Kennedy.
And the mate was throwing the lead. On the tug or on the...
I was on the tug, of course.
On the night the Star of Bengal was lost forever.
And then what happened, Jimmy?
I'm your host, Ronan Rooney. You're listening to Wrangell History Unlocked presents a Star of Bengal bonus, the James Kennedy tapes. Stay tuned. Chapter 1. A Brush with Fate. First off, I want to thank Bob Kennedy, originally from Ketchikan, for sharing these tapes of his grandfather, James Kennedy, with us. Thanks, Bob. James Kennedy was born in 1868 in Glasgow, Scotland. As a teenager, he boarded a steamship and crossed the Atlantic Ocean and landed in New York City on May 3, 1883. By 1908, James Kennedy was about 40 years old, the married father of 4 children and 1 stepchild, with his indigenous wife, Mary. The Kennedy family of 1908 lived at the Loring Cannery, not far from Ketchikan. The Alaska Packers Association employed James Kennedy as an engineer aboard the Kayak, a 115-ton steam-powered fish tender that also towed ships out to sea at the end of the season. In September 1908, the Kayak reported to Wrangell to tow the Star of Bengal out to sea. Another fish tender, the Hattie Gage, would serve as the lead towboat. Tragically, a fierce gale would push all 3 ships into Coronation Island, leading to the wreck of the Star of Bengal and the death of 111 lives. James Kennedy was interviewed in the investigation weeks after the wreck. How long have you been an engineer of the Kayak, Mr. Kennedy? How many different seasons?
5.
You probably have served a longer time in the Kayak than any other man, have you not?
Yes, sir.
How long have you been at sea on square-rigged sailing vessels?
I guess 4 years altogether.
My friend, John Schenk, is the voice of James Kennedy. John appeared throughout our series, Rise and Fall of the Star of Bengal, in many places, but his appearance here is special. John is the great-great-grandson of James Kennedy. Today, you'll hear James Kennedy's own voice at the age of 78, recorded in 1947. And you'll hear John reading his great-grandfather's testimony from 1908 at the age of 40. Together, they provide a complete picture of one man's experience on a harrowing, deadly voyage. If you'd like to follow along with a transcript, visit us at wrangellhistoryunlocked.com/star. Be advised, James Kennedy holds nothing back, and his language is, shall we say, quite salty. Listener discretion advised. Chapter 2. In his own words.
This recording was made in an interview by Ralph W. Carr, M.D., in 1947 in his office at 325 Dock Street, Ketchikan, Alaska, chatting with Jimmy Kennedy, who had been chief engineer of the tug Kayak at the time of the Star of Bengal disaster at Coronation Island.
Well, the ship was laid over there, and we were at this wharf here. Well, we went there to get rid of water, and Jake came down. And the sky was one of the wildest looking skies I ever saw.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, Jake, yeah, I says, you ain't going to send that ship out today, are you? Oh, yes, he says, she got to go. Well, I says, you'll be sorry for it. I says, look at that sky. I says, if you know anything about weather, I says, you'll never send that ship out. Who's got to go? Well, his wife's brother got grounded on the operation anyway. We had that satisfaction. This had a gauge, She wasn't as big a boat as we were, but she was a good boat. And Farrer, his name was Farrer, Captain Farrer. And where he ought to be working was on a farm.
Sure.
That's where the son of a bitch ought to have been. Anyway, we left.
We left Wrangell around 8 o'clock sometime. Light breeze and fine weather. We towed through those islands in front of Wrangell, but I forget the name of them. We were towing in close to Point Baker between the rock and the shore, and towards 6 o'clock, the wind begun to freshen a little. At 12:30, we were close to Coronation Island on our starboard hand.
Provided you were a stranger in this country, do you think it would have been, in your opinion, dangerous to go to sea then?
If I had been a stranger, I think I would have went to sea. Yes, sir.
But knowing as much of the country as you do, you would have thought it not safe to go.
I probably would have run back up the straits then.
I used to towboat too. I used to towboat on through the Sound, out to Cape Flattery. Now, a towboat man, he never crawls along the shore. He always takes the middle of the strait.
Mm-hmm.
And now, if he gets a gale wind from that side, he's still got some chance. Towboat men know these things. Well, anyway, we left Wrangell. Now, there's islands outside of there, outside of that. I think they're called the 5 Mile Islands. And damned if we didn't go between them. Toward that big ship, drawing 24 feet over.
24 feet?
Yeah. And
So you had a full pack then, huh?
well, they had the cannery. The season's pack was there. And the mate's name was Fred Wilkie. He was a German. But he was a good man. Well, he objected to the two boats. We were towing on the starboard bow. Our hawser was fast on the starboard side of the ship, and the hiding gauge was on the port side. Well, Wilkie was in the our pilot house, and so he called their attention to this going between them 5 Mile Island. And Farrer's son was at the wheel, and Farrer was laying down. And he woke up and he says, "You, all yes, we're doing this." Oh, all right. Well, then we went along. And then there's a rock called the Eye Opener, I think.
Eye Opener.
The Eye Opener. That's on Prince of Wales. Well, damned if he didn't go between that rock and the main island. Well, we made, even in spite of all this, we made 7 knots from Wrangell to Calder Rocks. Now, I don't know if you know anything about the lay of the land there. Well, anyway, Coronation Island is over here. And over here is Curio Island.
Curio, yeah.
As soon as they cleared that, it's only a short distance from here, outside there, and then they could let the ship go, and she's out in the Gulf of Alaska, where she can take care of herself. But no, instead of going that way, Farrer goes to work and he heads inside here and tows along the Coronation shore.
Between Warren Island and Coronation, with Coronation Island close aboard. We were towing in close to Point Baker, between the rock and the shore, and towards 6 o'clock, we were close to Coronation Island on our starboard hand. It was blowing a very fresh breeze at 12:30, and the sea was rising. Once in a while, the wheel would race, and the wind kept increasing from that on. The first racing she made was 12:30, and from that on, we stood by and she would race, but not all the time.
So I thought, well, I'll go on deck. So I went up on deck. And Patsy was up there in the wheelhouse, so I shook hands and steered. And I says, "Is it time, about time you whistle for the canvas?" Patsy says, "Do you know where you are?" "No," I says, "I don't know where we are, but I know where we ought to be." I says, "We ought to be clearing our Cape Decision." I says, "We ought to be clearing Cape Decision, Patsy." Aye, Patsy says, he was a tough, talking son of a bitch. But says, "We ain't going that's where we're going." He says, "We're going up in sight. Warren Island over and this Coronation." Well, I said, "That is a fucking layout." Father could hear me talking. I didn't confide my language with Bible class and attitude at all. So, our mate come up. And he comes and says, "Jimmy says we're going to lose this ship." I said, "I know that." I says, "What do you want me to do, to go out and shove?" "No. But we're going to lose it, yeah." Well, he started throwing the lead. You know that?
Yeah.
from the depth of the water. And he called the depth every time he made a cast. And a ship drawing 24 feet of water needs a little water under her keel.
When I heard him throwing the lead, I was standing at the door of the engine room on the lee door side. I generally stand up at the door when we were handling a tow until we tighten the line. I watch the line as the man at the throttle cannot see it. A man had to stand there all the time. We had to stand there to protect our engine. Of course, she was not racing all the time. I heard them talking about the rock. I looked at the rock myself. Well, I had seen the breakers and the sea breaking on it. I thought about 50 feet away to the rock when I looked, and they may have got closer afterwards, though.
So he was calling the depth. And the Patches says he could talk across to this part. Well, he says, I can't stay here much longer. There ain't much water under my keel, and there ain't much under the ship. And just that foot, they cut the horse, and they must have had a man standing there with an axe, and they cut the horse, and off they went to Warren Island. And we couldn't do nothing. And the ship had her anchors down, and we didn't know it.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing the ship didn't have, but the captain, I know the captain was drunk, he had no sight-lights, so.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, Pastor says, we can't stay here. We cut our horses. That's the last thing what I said, I think. We cut our horses. And not being locally acquainted, Patchy ran out to sea and hove to out there. And so I went in my room then and lay down a while. I had the boy there, lay in there.
Yeah.
So Patchy whistled down the danger room, and he told him he wanted me to come up. God damn him anyway. So I went up. And well, the sea looked bigger than it did from the main deck. Jesus, Patchy, I says, there's quite a sea running, yes. Well, Patchy says, we can't stay here. Well, I says, why don't you go in? Well, I know Patchy was scared to turn.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't blame him very much. Well, Patchy says, did you ever turn in a sea like this? I said, oh, yes, but I lied like hell. I knew if I didn't stretch something that we would never get out of here. Well, all right. Well, he says, generally, even off Cape Horn, there's 3 seas around. And in them 3 seas, generally, there's one a little smaller than the rest. Well, Patchy says, I'll look for a small sea. And then we was under a slow bell then, He says, I'll touch the bell and hand it to her. Oh, I says, we'll hand it to her, all right. So I stood by the engine room door on deck, and Patchy, he found the small sea, at least he said he did, but I think he found the biggest one. Because when she come up on that sea, now the Kayak had a long smokestack.
Yeah.
Come up on that sea and looked up like that, and the higher she went, the quicker my breath went away. And then when he put his wheel down, and she came round.
Yeah.
And I thought she was going to dip her smokestack in that sea.
Mm-hmm.
And my heart stopped beating for a minute.
Then we went out and stood off Coronation Island and lay there till daylight. At 6 o'clock in the morning, the captain called me up to the wheelhouse, and we talked about the advisability of turning around as it was evidently blowing a stiff gale. And the captain decided to turn around. We turned about with Coronation Island on our port hand, but we could not see anything of the ship. From there, we went to Warren Island, and it was blowing a heavy gale then.
And we got over to Warren Island, the Hattie Gauge was laying there. We lay there about, I think it was a half an hour there when our anchor carried away. We had an anchor there with about an 8-inch shack.
Is that?
And that broke off like a cannon.
Well,
we were adrift there.
From there, we went to Shipley Bay. It was still blowing heavy, and we anchored at Shipley Bay and lay there all night.
After you parted from the ship and had gone out, lying outside, what were you lying there for? Did you know what the master's idea was in lying there?
Waiting till daylight to see if anything could be done for the ship.
Then you think it was his bona fide intention to give assistance to the ship if possible?
Yes, sir.
Do you think it would have been impossible at daylight?
Yes, sir. He called me up to the pilot house. The sea was so big, and he was a little leery and afraid to turn around. He asked me if I had been to sea like this before with her, and I told him, nope, It was a heavy sea. The wind was still increasing at that time, and the sea was still increasing.
So this fellow said, well, I'll go to Wrangell and report this. Patsy says, you can go to hell and report yourself there. That's where you want to be anyway. Well, he went in and reported it. And next morning we went out to see to the wreck. And all I could see was one of the yards bobbing up and down. And we could see men on the beach, though. And I went up and I got the glasses and looked, and the beach was just filled with bodies.
Oh.
It was only the one little piece of sand beach on that island, on that side. Mm-hmm. And it was cheap there, that's the Providence, that we went ashore there. Anyway, the mate put the boat out, but he couldn't land. Mm-hmm. The sea was rolling in there, you know, and there was boxes of salmon and drums and one thing and another rolling in there. Well, Wilkie told them, he says, of course, there were most all white men that was there. He says, I can't take you off just now, but we'll come out tomorrow. Mm-hmm. Well, we'll come out tomorrow.
We went back to Shipley Bay that day and lay there till next morning. The weather was beginning to get fine, and we left Shipley Bay at 5 in the morning and met at the Hattie Gauge outside. Both boats went to the scene of the wreck, and we took the men aboard there.
And the sea was a little less, and we did get the men off. Out of the Oriental crew, we got 2, Shannon.
And how many drowned?
Eh?
How many drowned?
It was 111 drowned, and that was whites and
Whites and Orientals.
Which other?
When you took the survivors away from the wreck, was Captain Wagner aboard the kayak?
He was.
Did you have any conversation with him?
Yes, sir.
He is difficult in hearing.
Yes, he is deaf.
Did you have any trouble making him understand what you were talking about?
Oh, I had to bellow. Yes, sir.
Did he state to you during that trip that he thought the captains acted cowardly?
Yes, he intimated as much.
He didn't make the direct charge?
Well, he said they left us there to die.
There was a mistake made somewhere when the captain of that ship got off. That son of a bitch ought to be drowned. Mm-hmm. And he was a Montenegrin.
Oh.
You know where that country is?
Roughly.
It's in the Europe, some little place about that bit. Anyway, the son of a bitch, we got him. And I thought, you bastard, I'm sorry to see you here, because you ought to be on the beach there with the rest of them. No, we went to Wrangell. We had all the men that was alive. Jake Babler was there, his wife was there, and she was whining and hollering. You both drowned my brother. You both drowned my brother. Well, Heckman had came up there, Wrangell. Well, I said, don't you think you both had something to do with it too? No, the cause of the whole thing was Jake Babler shutting the ship out in that kind of a weather. Uh-huh. And it blowed for a week afterwards.
Oh, well.
Yeah. I know we came down the Narrows afterwards when we come back to Lord, and I went on with another boat and went down there, and by God, we could hardly stem it in here.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Jimmy.
Eh?
Chapter 3. Takeaways. James Kennedy had an incredible memory. He remembered minor details, like the fact that the captain of the Star of Bengal was from Montenegro, and that the captain of the Hattie Gauge was, in fact, a farmer. James Kennedy even proved me wrong on something. Patrick Hamilton's nickname was Patsy, P-A-T-S-Y, not Patty, as I had previously thought. James Kennedy's 2 stories, told nearly 40 years apart, are consistent, but it's his tapes that reveal new insights. James Kennedy accuses Captain Nicholas Wagner of the Star of Bengal of being drunk. As far as I know, that's not a corroborated statement, but it's not exactly hard to believe. Captain Wagner was below deck in his private quarters after 10 p.m. by himself. When he came on deck after 1:45 a.m., he acted like a raving maniac. Even Wagner admitted to shouting hopelessly into the dark for hours. His conduct was strange. 20 years after the wreck, Wagner's daughter would write a book and accuse the steamship captains of being drunk. Again, no corroborating evidence supports this. In the investigation after the wreck, The steamship captains Farrer and Hamilton teamed up to defend themselves. But James Kennedy reveals Patrick Hamilton's great anger at Captain Farrer in their meeting the morning after the Star of Bengal was lost. Captain Farrer faced critics from all sides, among the Star of Bengal survivors, newspapers, investigators, and even his fellow captain, Patrick Hamilton. But if the two men had any hard feelings towards each other, they never showed it publicly. One last final observation. James Kennedy's description of the survivors arriving at the dock in Fort Wrangell is shocking. The cannery superintendent, Jacob Babler, was there with his wife, Jeanette, whose brother, Norman Hawkins, was announced among the missing when the survivors arrived. Jeanette Babler began accusing the steamships of killing her brother, to which another cannery superintendent, J.R. Heckman of Loring, fights back, suggesting her husband might share some responsibility. More than any other victim of the wreck, Norman Hawkins' death would generate the most headlines. The Babler family offered $1,000 to anyone who found his remains. He was never found. James Kennedy went on to live a long, full life. His wife, Mary, passed away only a few years after the Star of Bengal wreck. At the age of 50, he remarried to a 22-year-old Simpson woman named Johanna, and had even more children. James Kennedy died on May 18, 1949, in Ketchikan, Alaska. He was 80 years old. That's all for Wrangell History Unlocked presents a Star of Bengal bonus, the James Kennedy tapes. I'm your host, Ronan Rooney. Thanks for listening. Thanks again to Bob Kennedy for sharing this recording with us, and thanks to John Schenk for reading the testimony. If you have any tapes or pieces of the Star of Bengal story you'd like to share, please get in touch. Our email address is wrangellpod@gmail.com. Thanks to Alice Rooney for performing our theme song, Alexander Archipelago. If you'd like to learn more about the Star of Bengal and read a transcript of today's episode, visit us at wrangellhistoryunlocked.com/star.